You sneaky little devil.
Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
Are you gonna keep the sexy glasses on?
Yeah.
Good, I like it.
That's funny.
Oh, Susanna, you look good. I like the red.
I
Thank
know that's what
you.
I thought. I said she looks so sexy.
Do you have
Hello.
the notes, Sam?
No, you have the notes.
Listen,
It
bitch.
was in your house.
I have it.
Why
I
are
have it.
you painting?
Oh, they're right here.
Hi.
Hi. So today we wanted to talk about sex. And I think that's a very layered and loaded conversation that will probably be a two-part episode. We want to talk about it from the perspective of our experiences, our age, and also just how many things like society and gender and generation affect our ability to be sexual in a long-term relationship in all areas, even things like perimenopause, things like just shame and guilt in exploring that side of ourselves. And so we wanted to really dedicate 2 episodes to this and kind of share our perspectives on it and what we've learned over the years. And yeah, does anyone want to add anything before we get into our first share?
What do you like? What kind of vibe that we like in the bedroom?
Not yet, Susanna. Calm down. We're getting there.
No,
What is
I think
our vibe?
we have time for that part. Lovely.
he's been drinking.
We will. We will get to that. We will get to that. So why don't we start with like sharing our experiences with how we viewed even that part of ourselves in our, I guess, late teens, early 20s. Because sexuality is I've learned over the years, sexuality is part of being a human being,
Mhm.
unless you decide you don't want to have any part in it, that's your choice. But, even our children, we have to start seeing our children as that's part of their being. And so just like, in our 20s, what was going on in that time that we didn't feel that was possible, or was there shame attached to that was there?
Yeah.
And I think that some of the things that we touched on and we can all share was how religion and culture and the expectations of being a woman or a Latina woman or a woman of color affected how we viewed our own sexuality and what we were taught at home. I'll start. For me, it was, being Catholic. I remember being told you have to wait till you're married to have sex, and then eventually, I kind of saw my mom shift a little, like just at least be in a serious relationship where he respects you, which is fair. And I think that kind of created this whole thing. I think with Catholicism, being raised Catholic, I think that created a whole perception of I need to be a good girl, right?
Mhm.
And so with that came, either you become, well, I'll speak for myself, either you get sneaky and find creative ways to explore behind, closed doors, or you embrace it and you learn about it and you're like, oh, this is a part of me. This is a part of this age that I'm at, that this is something I want to explore. Whereas I think this generation may be a little more, I mean, I'm not going to speak for the generation, but this time is a little more acceptable. I remember not wanting a relationship in my 20s, when everyone else around me did have boyfriends. I had a high school boyfriend, I had a college boyfriend, but it wasn't like a big deal to me because I'm like, I'm not going to marry them, so why, get involved? And it wasn't like I wanted to have sex, but I wanted to have more freedom. So what I ended up doing was I felt like I was dating behind people's backs because I didn't feel comfortable sharing that it wasn't a serious relationship. So I'm dating this guy or I'm seeing this guy. And, if it didn't have some level of seriousness, I didn't feel comfortable sharing with my friends. Some of you I did, but like I really didn't, because I was afraid of judgment. And it's not that I was ashamed, but it was like I didn't see didn't see a lot of people around me being able to explore that side of themselves. And it wasn't so much about sex, but it was more about like dating and freedom and exploring men and having fun and things of that nature. So I would say the Catholic thing and just what you're taught.
Well, I recently saw a reel. I don't know if it's true or not, but they said the average 26-year-old today has more bodies, has a more body count than the average 50-year-old woman. And I was like, I work in a college, so I know what happens with this generation. And I felt like for me, growing up, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, so everything was AIDS. And then when you got into high school and in college, it was like, you got to use a condom, you got to use a condom. You were drilled with it, and it was available everywhere. There was a bowl of condoms in the nurse's office. There was a bowl of condoms, and it was really about preventing STDs, preventing AIDS, the AIDS outbreak, all of that. And then you have the Catholic. So, so my mom was very, very Catholic, and it was, you have to wait till you're married. That's what she did. And that was what was expected. And Catholic teaches it as being a sin. And so it wasn't until I was getting married that I took pre-Cana classes where the script flipped it. Now, I don't know if you took pre-Cana classes, but they were like, no, sex is the most important part of marriage. Sex. And I was like, why don't you teach it that way from the beginning? I was like, if you taught it that way from the beginning, where people understood that it's meant to be sacred and a different exchange, maybe people wouldn't. Like, for me, I was terrified. And my mom was also prudish. My mom never had the sex talk with me, ever. And I learned from older cousins, like her cousins that did sex ed class. Like, she sat down with all of us and taught us. So my mom never had that conversation with me until my mid-20s. And which I'm like, Mom, it's a little too late. Like, I've already
done that.
I even remember going to Melissa's mom to talk about different, I don't want to do birth control. What are my options? And Melissa's mom was a nurse, and she kind of explained and had a conversation with us about it I don't know if it was in college or right after college.
Yeah, like once I got to my 20s, she kind of relaxed a little. And
and I remember her sitting down
and you have to have sex with your husband.
Like, yeah. Okay. But I remember she was open to explain it and give all the options, which I appreciated. And that's what I told my mom. I'm like, you never had this conversation with me when you should have. I had to go to other people's mothers or learn from friends or learn from reading books or learn on my own. And so it was a lot of undoing of negative things. It's like, you can get pregnant, you can get a disease, it's a sin. So everything was negative. Everything was shame. And so there was this big healing on sex that you have to do to release a lot of that shame. And so where, the generation now, they don't have that, it's very, very different. And I have conversations like this all the time, which we'll get into later in the training room with the athletes and with these kids in college. And we talk about that. But for me growing up, and I remember in college, my mom finding out. You guys remember this? And because we were all living together at that time. And when my mom was one of those old school moms where she would be like, so I had a dream. I think you are having sex, right? And she called me. This is how shameful it was. She called me every single day at 7 a.m. crying on the phone, calling me a whore, calling me dirty.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
And my roommate was like, because she would call my college for my dorm phone. And my roommate's like, listen, this has to stop. And I remember telling my mom, like, you have to stop. And we would unplug the phone at night because she would call every morning at 7 and just, you're a whore. I keep having these dreams of rat. And so how does that leave you?
My gosh.
Yeah. So it's pretty heavy that you have to heal all that.
A
lot of shame. I don't know what yours was like, Susanna.
I was Catholic. I did go to Catholic school. So that where the shame came from that for sure. Like you can't have sex till you're married or whatever. My mother about that, like, I know you're probably going to have it before you get married. But she would tell me, you'd have to protect yourself. go to, regular GYN checkups and, all that stuff. Worked with, she saw people, young teenage pregnancies and everything. And she was the program director and teacher in a daycare center where, it's just, she's exposed, she was just not one of those. She's very understanding, she was like the cool mommy. Father, I never had any sex talk with him. He was more of that, like, he was the type, I come down in something that I would wear, like, the time where we would wear tight bodysuits and baggy jeans, or like a short skirt. And what are you wearing that for? He's one of those, you can't wear. I still had this shame. And the fear, I had such a fear of AIDS and HIV. I wasn't even doing anything at one point, and I still had the fear of it. Like, oh my God, do you think I have it? Like, is it dormant? I had nothing going on, but everyone, I had boyfriends, so I didn't date around like you, Melissa. I always had, no, listen, I wish I did. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasted time. Some, it's a little bit of a waste of time. There were some of them were learning experiences, being with someone for a long time or whatever. And, it ended up going there. I really, anything. Yeah, I just kept it hush hush. I didn't tell my mother anything, although I probably could have. I never told her anything that I did. I snuck out a lot.
Look at your face.
And, Oceanside, what?
Like the way you're face.
With our friends and things like that. And it was a great time, but I had a lot of,
I think that's part of it. It's not so much, but like whether it was
Your
some
microphone.
of it created sneaky behavior for me. Can you hear me?
I'm dying of heat. I'm sweating.
Really? Getting hot and sweaty for the sex conversation.
What?
On what? No, we're laughing at each other.
I can't hear you guys.
You can't hear me?
It's so annoying.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
I put 1, the AC on 69. Oh. I'm having a hot flash or something.
Maybe.
Ooh.
Let's go back to body counts.
Oh, body counts. Yeah. So
I'm not saying share that. I'm just saying.
No. I mean, I don't care because I could like probably count on two hands, but meanwhile, I hear body counts are up in the hundreds these days. Like, I can't even imagine effing that many people. Like, I don't know. Like,
dealing with young people on a daily basis. Like, for them too, it's not just the sexual freedom that they have, which is great. I'm all for that. You don't have the shame, the guilt, the fear that was imposed on me. But I find two things. One, their parents don't tell them anything.
Whoa.
You would think it has changed, right?
Yeah. They come to college and they don't know shit. Some of them. And then the second thing is also their body count also includes same sex. So they're having sex with men, and like girls are having sex with men and women. So there's that freedom too. Like, I remember our generation, we would go out and we may have like a few drinks and kiss each other and, smack each other's ass or whatever. Like, we would.
Oh, you remember that, Sammy?
Yes, I remember that. I loved being groped by my girlfriends.
And then, so innocent. My God.
Right. And we did that for years until somebody did turn gay and we were like, oh, maybe we should.
She was probably already gay.
She probably was.
Definitely was.
Definitely. But that was the joke. We're like, yeah, we don't do that anymore. Somebody liked it a little too much, and that was like the joke. But but they flip back and forth all the time. And I saw it get like, especially the girls, like gradually get more and more, or girls would, say they were a lesbian all throughout college. And then, I'll follow them because I don't follow them on social media until after they graduate. And then they're married with kids. And I'm like,
what happened?
And so I was always confused by that. So I always ask questions. And I would even ask questions sometimes because I have daughters. So I would ask some of them, like, because again, this is how my mind thinks. I'm like, did you, like, when did you know? And they were like, oh, I knew kind of in high school or middle school. And I'm like, when did your parents find out? And they were like, oh, not till I was older. And I'm like, so you had sleepovers? And they were like, yeah. And my
Oh.
parents had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And this
Oh.
person was, I'd say they were my best friend, but they weren't my best friend.
Sneaky mother fluffers.
And I'm like, huh. So I'm like in my head, like taking notes because I got daughters, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. So they're like, yeah, I got away with it for years because they would sleep over my house and in my room and stuff like that, which you couldn't do like with a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I'd ask questions like that. And then eventually over the years, then the guys started doing it. And I would hear stories in the training room and I'm like, wow, okay, this is evolving. So then I got to the point where I didn't know who was gay or straight. So I would like, I joke in the training room all the time. I'm like, everybody's gay. You're gay unless you tell me you're not gay because you guys have me so confused.
Oh my God.
And I'm, you know, so it's like an ongoing joke in the training room. And you know, so, and some people, I have really bad like gaydar. Like I don't never know if a person's gay or straight. So I'm just like, I just assume you're gay unless you tell me you're straight because at this point, everybody's gay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
we're experimenting.
Right, they keep flipping back and forth, but that's college life. So I'm just like, okay, very different.
I might get a little whatever
Pushback, backlash.
like pushback on this, but for me, body count is penetration. So I wouldn't just like if I was with you know, I'm not obviously I'm
Yeah,
not.
doesn't mean you're not getting penetrated by a female. They have strap-ons and they have all kinds of. You know how many times somebody came to the training room with a sex injury?
Wait, okay, I know, but it's but
where girls are like, my back hurts from the strap-on, Sam. But they're not telling me that. I find that out later.
Oh shit! I know. I don't know. Like a strap-on's a strap-on. It's not
a penis.
I don't know. I just don't feel like you know. It's almost like, you know, in my hetero, my cisgender world. If I laid with a guy and you know he ate me out and he stuck his fingers in me, I still wouldn't make that a body count. But if you know if he stuck his penis in me, yeah, that's a body count right there. So like, you know what I mean? Like I don't see two women who are eating each other out and sticking fingers and stuff in each other. I don't consider that. I don't know. That's right. My old Gen X.
But that's sex for them. It's still sex. I'm just saying, like, it's still sex. In this context, the everything but when our generation, which is what you're saying, the intercourse piece of how we view sex. So
right.
Well, that was right. So that
it's like, well, I did everything, but I'm still a virgin. Because that was put into our heads about waiting. So it's like, well, I'm not doing anything wrong because I'm a virgin. But then you would know women, or you know, who would do blowjobs and who would do everything, other things, and the types of penetration that weren't a penis. And that's like, I'm still a virgin.
Not a rubber replica with veins.
Yeah, a contracted, hard penis. Hopefully. So yes, and so I think like that's another thing that kind of came out of either the shame or the sneakiness that we weren't allowed to really, I guess, embrace that side of ourselves because it was kind of tainted in how it was taught to us. And even if it wasn't taught negatively, it was like this hush hush, you're a good girl, quiet, you don't talk about that. You know, even my own friends, like sometimes I'm like, oh, you want to talk about it? Even that felt taboo with a lot of you guys, you know, and not that I wanted to necessarily but I mean, when I did, I felt like, well, no one's really wants to talk about this, or it's weird. So, you know.
Well, I talked to my friends about it. My girlfriends.
I feel like I brought it up in our many party days, and it was like crickets. So I was like, all right.
I don't give a shit.
Well, now we're like, yeah. I mean,
I'm trying to think.
I think that's the point of reflecting, right? How what we were thinking.
Well, I remember my girlfriend had a book, and she was like trying to learn, like, well, how do you give a blowjob? Because like, how else are you going to learn outside of porn, right? And like that's how guys learn through porn, but how do girls learn? Like they can learn through porn too, but it's like that's not teaching you like real sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she had a book and she was like trying to learn. So she would like come and like show us and then go and do it and then tell us what to do, what the book said, and then we would come back to compare notes and be like, did he turn, like we would talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being at dinner and my two girlfriends, us talking about it but that's because my girlfriend was open to that and she wanted to explore and she wanted to learn and she wanted to do it right. And, so she always made it funny. But I learned a lot having those conversations.
Well, yeah, I had another girlfriend but she went the extreme. She navigated the territory of raunchy. So I was kind of like, we know who we're talking.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
So I mean, I feel like healthy sexuality is just the openness of it and just, kind of taking out the shame. Now, I think that leads us into energy. However, my opinion, I do not feel like having sex with a lot of people is really for me either, because I'm a spiritual being. I have learned over the years, with our wisdom over the years, energy is real. Chemistry, not even chemistry, energy. So when you're having sex with a person, you are taking on not only their energy, you're taking on their energy, but you're also taking on their issues, their traumas, their anxiety, their depression. And it could be the healthiest person that's your partner, that you love them and that and next thing you know, the next day you're like, oh, I feel a little anxious here. So energy is real. So if you're going to do it casually, which is totally fine, now that I've become, unfortunately, not by choice, single in this stage of life, and I think about that stage of life in this part of my life of becoming sexual at some point or whatnot, I feel like I would be very weary beyond STIs and any of that other stuff. I'd be more concerned about energy and how that can impact me. I'm already grieving. I'm already going, for anyone that doesn't know, my husband passed away last year. And so I'm already feeling intense and doing my work and being a mom and navigating this journey. And so to bring on someone else's energy that's so heavy for whatever they're going through, because we're all people of a certain age and we've been through things, that's just life. And so, and some people don't do their work, right? And so I would be very, very mindful of like, whose energy am I bringing in to my body at this point? Not because I want to be a prude, not because I'm not curious, not because I'm not going to have feelings, not because I'm not sexual, just more so because I'm already dealing with so much and I'm very mindful of whose energy is coming into my body. My body is my temple. I do believe that. Our bodies are our temple, at least in my opinion. And so, who's coming into this temple? You need to be correct. And so I think that that's another important thing that I think we've all learned over the years of what that can mean for us.
And I've had that conversation many times over the years with the college students, because in the training room we kind of get into these little conversations when there's not a lot of people. They pick my brain. They're curious, but they also see me giving life advice about stuff. So sometimes this comes up, and I remember, and I'll just give a couple examples. Like this one girl, they broke up, and her and the boyfriend broke up, and it was a very toxic, intense relationship, but they were still fucking. And so she was like in the training room and she was kind of down. And I was like, what's going on? And she was complaining. She was just like, oh, he still comes to my room, like just for sex. And I was like, so how does that work? And she was just like, he comes to the room and I just drop my pants and we have sex or whatever. And then he goes. Like, and how do you feel after that? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, well, how do you feel today? And she was like, I don't know, I'm kind of off. So I had this whole conversation with her about energy exchange and how, you have a man penetrating you. I'm like, you're the female, so you're the receiver. And and I teach this also like in my meditation classes when we do chakra work, where you have the sexual chakra. I'm like, the woman is the receiver, the man is the giver. And if he's not pouring into you, I said, pay attention to how you feel after sex. So, and I've had this conversation so many times. I'm like, if the next day you feel energized and revitalized, that was a good exchange. because sex is the most powerful, intimate exchange energetically. If you feel good, that means he's into you. That means you feel good. He was pouring into you. If you feel down, you feel depressed, you feel low energy, you feel off, he took from you. He was just trying to get his nut and do whatever. He might have a little pep in his step or whatever, but he took your energy. So now you're like calling him, or you have this impulsive, which girls are like, because that's what you get in college, like, oh, boys are dumb and girls are crazy. And I'm like, no, it's just your energy exchange is wrong. And I'm like, if they take your energy, and then what happens too? So if you're an empathetic person like myself, right? If I go and have sex and they had sex with somebody else that is not a good person or is carrying a lot, and they're taking that energy and then they're now coming, I feel that. Because I'm a receiver and I take energy on, right? So now you're dumping someone else's crap on me. And if you're really empathetic, you feel that in your body physically, like that physically feels like pain. And you don't even realize how much it influences you if you're not aware, if you're not consciously aware of the energy exchange. So yes, that energy exchange with the chakras and everything is a real thing. And you have to pay attention to how you feel afterwards. So I always tell the girls, I'm like, pay attention. This is how you know whether you keep entertaining it or you don't. How do you feel afterwards?
And I don't think, and I agree with you, but I also think that goes from human to human. I don't think that's just a gender thing, even though I know in gender wise things happen maybe a little more in one with the other, but I think that goes with anyone else. You have a toxic woman, a woman with trauma, a woman with all the things that she hasn't resolved and or working on, and that's fine. You know, we all have our stuff, and she's bringing it to the man. I think it's just an energy exchange, period. I don't think it's I just think, period, you have to be very mindful. I mean, I'm all about casual sex and exploration and exploring that sexual part of you and taking away all the shame, but I feel like that's just a big deal and a big part of you, because now you have these strangers energy in you, or even people you care about. Like, even if it's both consensual, it's a agreement, you know, we're gonna have, or we're in a relationship. I mean, we all have stuff, right? And what are you taking on? And I just feel like there's a level of mindfulness. And with what you were saying with the chakras, I think people don't I think what I learned too is that creativity comes from the power in in the chakra, which, what is it, the sacral, the sacral chakra, which is like your energy source, especially for a woman. Well, for a woman, you know, that's your womb. And if there's trauma there, if there's things you've been through, if there's anything that you need to heal, your power, you're not really in touch with that power part of you, that powerful part of you. And so I think the sexuality, the power, the creativity that really comes with the power when you are in that alignment with your sexuality is important to talk about. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And I think that's really, really, I've noticed that a lot more in the last few years.
And even when people, like, for me, like when I had like a spiritual awakening and stuff, and other people that I've talked to that went through the same thing, there is that chakra gets flooded with creative energy, but in the body it feels like your libido's gone up, so you feel hypersexual,
right?
And like you feel like you need to release sexually. And so, and again, when you're doing chakra work and you're intentional about it, you're like, okay, well, I'm taking this vital force energy, this creative energy that is coming up because my body's saying, hey, you need this right now because you're going through a transformation and initiation. And you can even, there's an awakening there at some point when you're having a spiritual awakening, where that awakens inside of you, and you feel weird things that you've never felt before. But you get flooded with this sexual energy, but it's not meant to be sexual. Although sexual energy is healing, it's meant to be creative and for you to get curious about your healing and be more aware and conscious of your body and the nonverbal signals that your body's giving you and what they mean. So sometimes people get confused with that too. And I know a lot of people get lost when they're having those spiritual type of awakenings in their body. Their body gets flooded with sexual hormones, and their libido gets raises.
How do you get rid of that energy? Like if it's bad energy after sex?
Oh, you mean the energy piece of having sex with someone?
How do you get rid of it?
Clearing, cleansing, Reiki. I don't know, Sam. What else? There's a bunch of things, you know, just really being in
It's
touch
like
with
to
what
take
it
years.
is. Well, you also have to be mindful, like what's yours and what's theirs. You know, you don't always know it's theirs.
It's a spiritual cleansing. So
Yeah,
there are baths you can
cleansing.
take. It's intentional. It's putting the intention in it. So if I'm doing like a shower or a spiritual cleanse, like I can do in that. I can do it in meditation and put the healing energy on me and then cut what?
You could do a yoni steam. Does anyone know what that is?
Yeah.
Yes, a yoni steam.
No.
I
You can
did a
do a
yoni
yoni
steam.
Is that in your vagina?
Yes, you
Yeah.
put steam up
Oh,
the
okay. I heard about
vagina.
that.
It works.
Yeah, so you can do you
Yeah.
can do a cleanse that way. You can cut a cord, an energetic cord through a meditation, a guided meditation. It's all about intention and then protecting your energy and clearing your aura,
being
stuff
mindful.
like that.
And also, because I mean, according to what we've all read and learned, it takes 7 years to get someone else's energy out of your body.
Yeah, it's like a credit report. Jesus.
Word.
Bad credit. 7 years.
Damn it.
Damn.
So
tell me about this yoni.
So I felt I needed to do a womb cleansing for various reasons. And I was advised to get a yoni steam. At first, I didn't know what that was. I never heard of it. Apparently it's a thing. People have heard of it. And that makes sense. You know, even if you have a miscarriage, if you've been violated sexually, which a lot of people have, or abused when you were a kid, you may have, or you may have, you know, you had a DNC after an abortion or a miscarriage. You can have residuals of whatever, it's grief or trauma or anything that's really in your womb that's you're holding on to. And you know, it's energetic, but it's obviously we're speaking more on an energetic basis, but it's such a sacred spot and it's place in your body and in the energy field that you don't want that to just stay there, and that will affect your creativity and your power, right? That will affect you, and you can, you know, it even gives like physical symptoms. So I was advised to get one done. And then there's different ones. I mean, this is ancient. This goes back to our, you know, communities in Africa and whatnot. And you sit over something where you like, they're burning herbs and like and the steam is coming out and goes up your vagina. So it's basically, and you do a meditation. It's like warm water. You do it with intention. You sit in it and the steam goes up your vagina, and then you just sit there and just allow it to cleanse you, or to whatever it is that you need from that, you allow it. And I just meditated, journaled, and that's all I did, because I made sure I was in a quiet space. They actually have like Sam, right? They even have groups that have done this, you know, like I know people who've done,
or they have like I have the yoni stone.
Oh, okay.
So like you would insert that, and so I would sit in a meditation and you're contracting and pulling the energy up into your body, and you're going through a whole meditation or whatever, so you're healing.
Wait, the stone is in your vagina?
I didn't put the stone. Yeah, and I just had the herbs, the steam from the herbs.
You had the bidet
I had
version.
the bidet version, and it was just like going in there. And I mean, there's different forms. What I was saying was like there's circles, there's yoni circles. So like they've done it with, so I mean, you know, they have the right gear, the right clothes, the right situations, because they have these like big batas. How do you say in English?
Yeah,
The
bata.
big batas.
Oh,
And then
the
you're
granny,
covering
like a
you, and then you
granny.
sit over the little stool, and then and then there's a hole in the stool, and depending what it is, they have plastic ones now, but like there's a hole in the stool, and then that's where the herbs are burning and the steam is going in you. Just
perfect.
Anyway, I mean, I think it was just worth mentioning. So anyway, back to sex. So I think that's worth mentioning, because I think that just shows how deep it goes, right? And in our experience over the years, how we are all empathetic and take on energy very easily, and we've all been conscious of being aware that could come into us. So sex is one of the biggest ways for that to happen. So it's not just like, oh my God, her energy, you know, and you're in a party and you're feeling other people's energy, but now, you know, you have to think about sex. Like, who's coming into your body? You know, that's real. That's heavy energy. So,
and you want it to be, like I said, sex can be very, very
it could be
healing.
amazing, you know.
Yeah. So having that experience with a partner that really, is holding that space for you and the intention, it could be really healing and release a lot of things that have. So that's important, right? Who you choose as a partner, whether you're building, because trust, respect, like all those things, all those intentions have to be there in the right. What else?
Can we get to the fun stuff?
Go right ahead.
No, you.
Well, I'm going to say this. Okay. So as much as my parents were, not my parents, my mom was a prude. When they retired,
I know what this is going.
When they retired, I had my eyes open, right? So I go to visit them. They retired down in Florida in a retirement community. And yeah. And so I took a red eye. My dad picked me up from the airport. He goes, "We're having a barbecue at 11 o'clock with neighbors. I want you to meet all the neighbors. We're so excited. We want you to meet them." And I'm like, dude, I have to sleep. I'm not ready for a pool party or a barbecue. And he insisted, no, you can't go to sleep. You have to get ready as soon as we get back to us. So I go over there, and now like they're geriatric, right? So all filters gone. They're talking about all the taboo stuff, religion, sex, politics, no holds bar, right? And they're drinking 11 o'clock in the morning. They have it by the buckets. The margaritas in the freezer already going, barbecue going. They're jumping in the pool.
Oh, shit. Right?
And then they're talking about sex. Right?
Oh, my God.
So I leave to go call my husband. And he's like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "Do you remember in the 80s that movie Cocoon?
Yeah.
The aliens came and they were in the pool and the old people were jumping around and they were happy, whatever." Yeah. I'm in that movie right now. That movie's happening. I'm with the Cocoon people. They're all having sex, whatever. So then I start learning all these stuff, right? They talk about key parties. I'm like, okay. So they're like, yeah, you go to a party, a social in someone's house or whatever, and they have a bowl and you put your key in the bowl. And then after the party, after everybody's drinking, after everybody's good, you pick a key, and whoever's key you pick, that's who you go home with and have sex.
Oh, shite.
Damn, these people took us to the next level. Like, we didn't even do that in college. Like, hello, right?
Yeah.
So that, and at this point, like, I get it. It's a different era. Like, they've already lived their life. They don't give a shit, right? And I watch on the news, and there's a woman and a man that get arrested. So there was this place called the Villages, and it was on the news. And so this 70-year-old woman gets arrested for having sex in public with her 50-something-year-old boy toy. This is literally the headline. And her husband was home in a wheelchair. She was his caregiver. And they were so blasted, like drunk, they were having sex in town and got arrested, right? And then they're going on how in the geriatric community, they have the highest STD rate.
I heard that.
In the Villages. Yep. Heard the same.
So I'm like, this is like college all over again, but worse, right? Because you have no responsibility. You don't give a fuck. Your time's limited.
That's right. They don't care.
They're just like, everything goes. Everything goes.
The clap is running rampant.
Complete opposite, where I work with young kids and they're running the streets doing stuff. And I'm like.
And this is probably the silent generation.
Yeah, so, but I get it, because at that age,
who cares?
It's like,
I don't give a fuck.
You're not dating. You're not whatever. I'm not trying to create anything with you. Like, I just need to be touched. Yeah. I need to be felt. Like, I'm still a sexual being. I still got it in me. Yeah. Like, and sex is good for you, right? Especially for women. Like, that's our hormones. That regulates our hormones. That every menopause class I took to learn about menopause, that was the one thing they said. You have an orgasm every day. So like, when you're going through menopause, you have to give yourself an orgasm every morning to get the juices flowing. And she didn't just say have an orgasm. She was like, whether you have a partner or not. She's like, you don't have a partner? Get a vibrator. Every morning, first thing in the morning, give yourself an orgasm. And she went in detail. She's like, you have to give yourself a breast massage. You have to stimulate your nipples. And when your mouth starts salivating, because this is connected to that, she goes, that's how you know you got the juices flowing.
Really? I never concentrated in my mouth.
Right.
But I did do what you told me. And let me tell you, the next day, Tammy, I was running into my job. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
That morning orgasm did wonders, huh?
Oh,
Put a
man.
little pep in your step, gave you a little glow.
Well,
good old shower one.
Listen, it's important for our health. It's important for our hormones. It's important for our mental health, our physical health, everything. And they don't tell you that. My mother never said that. My mother never told me anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Touching yourself growing up was taboo all the way through. All the way through.
And even in the church, that's considered a sin.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to share in my journey of being a widow, which is still a strange word for me to say, I found out through a lot of helpful podcasts, and I hope I can pass this information on. Unfortunately, if you are in this situation, but how there's this thing called widow's fire, and it's basically after your partner, your spouse passes, right? You're left by yourself, and once those initial, and everybody goes through it obviously very differently. Apparently it's that feeling of wanting sex and anything sexual after you're realizing, after the shock wears off or whatever it is that you've been through, that the hormones are kind of starting to surge and craving not just sex but also intimacy, right? Because now you've lost the intimacy that goes along with the sex. Hopefully, not everyone, and that's a whole other conversation. But the intimacy, the touch, like you said, Sam, like all of these things are gone, and so there's this hormonal piece of wanting sex for men and women, but then there's also the hormonal piece of wanting touch, and so that's they've labeled that, they've called that widow's fire. I've learned a lot about it. And also kind of like, well, you're a widow now, because we used to look at widows as older people, right? Older women. Ideally, that's what you want, right? To be older when your person dies. Unfortunately, that was not my situation. So I found that a lot of these podcasts and groups have been super helpful in learning these terms. And there's another term, because now you're in a situation where it's like, well, I'm supposed to be a good woman again, right? Because now I'm a mother whose kids don't have a parent, and this is really the consensus of the widow podcast I listened to, so I can only speak from that perspective. And so it's like, well, where is my sexual identity? Where's the part of me that wants to be sexual again? How is that going to be fulfilled? And now that you've lost that part, if you've lost that part, if your relationship was if that part was fulfilled in your relationship. And so I think like that's really important, because I think that sometimes that word has this connotation of you're supposed to be mourning and sad and not thinking about those things, and it's not true, apparently. So I've been learning a lot about that. And I think that, we're, especially younger widows, we're like a little bit on the, a lot of people our age haven't been through this yet. So it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think that that's been really eye-opening. Also the piece of dating and how you are, what do you want, right? At this stage of life, that you're older, but you're not dead. You're not 90, you wanna, and so it's like a lot of room to explore. So it's almost like you're returning to that 20-something-year-old self, especially in my age range, like, what do I want? Who am I?
Right. That's what I was going to say. And this may be a little bit, but it's almost like kind of also, I mean, it's really crappy that you are a widow. Yes, at this age, but past that, we know this. Part of it, like also like I'm kind of free again to experience this with someone new. You know what I mean? As much as you loved your husband, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying any widow, but as much at this age, I'm not talking about 80 years old, but as much as you did love your husband, but it's almost like, well, it's because let's be real, you're with someone for 30 years. It's like it gets, you get, oh my God, I don't want to get in trouble, but it gets monotonous.
Yeah, no, that's real talk.
I mean, we're human beings. Yeah. There are people that feel that people aren't meant to be with one person for the rest of their life.
If the 40-year-old Sam, had that confidence and that peak at 20, my life would have been very different. But,
Right.
there comes a point in your life where your sexuality too, you're at your peak older as well. That's how it is. Like, men peak younger, women peak later. So you also have not just the widow fire, but that age range where this is my primal years. It's that in between where it's like I'm no longer having sex to bear children. Like, now I'm doing it for fun. Like, now
and
I'm
you've
doing it for me.
experienced.
And my belief, and this is just my personal opinion, is I feel like women are more sexual beings than men. Like, we need it more. Like, for on all levels, mentally, physically, like emotionally, spiritually, like we are very sexual beings. And I think sex is a huge, like, it's one of the top tier things, I think.
And it's definitely more than just sticking your penis in there. Like, I need massive foreplay, I need the whole,
you need the emotional connection. You need,
Yeah, I know the connection's important for me. And I think that, there's that stimulation intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, that some people need, men too. I think that, if that part's not there, you can look as hot as you can, and that doesn't do anything for me. That wouldn't do
if
anything
you're
for
not
me.
here.
I need stimulation mentally and emotionally and physically. And I think the physical will come. And I think that's what a lot of people who have either who are mature, who have done their work, those are types of situations that, kind of give that maturity of like, well, how do I connect to you? Energetically, chemistry wise, it's more than just you look good. I mean, that's maybe in our 20s, that's all that we needed. But right now, I know that whether you're married or not, you want that level of connection. And I think that connection is just so important as well to lead to the physical.
Yeah, but if you see them dirty nails, I'm not fucking you.
No, listen, what I'm trying to say is that's the surface, right? That's the basic. Like, we got the basic. You look good. I'm attracted to you. All right, we can do this. But
I just had to tie in my pet peeve.
Yeah, no, we're not saying that like physical on its own is not important. I'm just saying once you get through that barrier, what else?
I was just kidding. It was just a joke.
What else?
Well, I think too, in this day and age where sex is so casual, right? Like, you can get sex easily anywhere. Like, if you want that, you can get that easily. But it's like, do you want something more? And I think people don't realize how important human connection is.
Yeah.
And so meeting somewhere where you meet all those intellectually, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and then you get to the physical, it's like the icing on the cake. And so for a woman, they want and you're right, men do too. Men want, and even at the college level, because again, I have these sex talks all the time in the training room, and the guys are like, no, sex is definitely better with a connection. They admit it too.
Right.
Well, I've talked to guys our age, and I've talked to guys our age, and they'll say, guy friends or people I know, they're like, I could fuck anybody. Like, I've gotten 30-something-year-olds hit on me, and they're like 50 or 45. Sex is sex, but I don't want that anymore. These are men, like this is what I mean by the maturity piece. Like, I want more. I want connection. I want, if I'm not stimulated, if she's not smart. I've had all these conversations, with guy friends, my brother, like people that I know that, people want more out there. We want connection.
Yeah, and you can have a 10 in front of you, and then you can have like a 6. And I could pick a 6 over a 10.
Yeah, because they have the other stuff, right?
Yeah, if they have the other stuff, like you could be a 10, and there's men out there that they're not quote unquote good looking, but they're whatever. But their personality and their traits,
their
and
energy,
how even their energy, how you click, that could get very sexy to a woman. Very.
Well, and listen, guys know that, right? Because again, I have these conversations. So I'll have guys, like I'll have a guy that's a 6 and another guy that's a 10, and they're buddies, right? So they go out all the time, and the 6 will say, the 10 doesn't have to do nothing. They're attractive. So girls their age are like, oh, he's cute. They want to talk to him. They want to hook up. They want to whatever. But he has no personality, no substance in it. Can't hold a conversation, whatever, right? So girls just look at him to hook up because he's good looking. He's like, I'm a 6. I gotta have a personality. I gotta have fun. I have to be funny. I have to know how to talk to people because I gotta convince people that I'm worth your time.
And I will choose that 6.
Right? Because I know I'm a 6. So they're like, and so they'll tell their friend that's good looking, they're like, we're trying to teach them how to have a conversation with a girl because they don't even know how to have a conversation or how to connect because they never had to. They just flash their smile and they're good looking. So it's funny to hear young guys talk where they're just like, yeah, we're trying to teach my friend how to like talk to girls because he's never had to try.
Yeah, and also I think we sometimes we don't give men enough credit. Like a lot of us mothers, I'm a boy mom. A lot of us mothers, boys are being raised to be more in touch with their feelings. They're being told, things to want more, to be more in touch with their emotions and to share and to be more vulnerable. I'm not saying it's taking a while, but society has been tough in that sense on them, to shut down and to like not say anything and to not be, to be a man and not like have emotions. And so now that we are raising boys to have the emotional intelligence, they're looking for more, right? So it's not like that whole just physical. I mean, granted, when you're in your 20s, you're going to look for something different than in your 40s and 30s. But I mean, I'm just saying that times are changing and boys are not these inept beings anymore. They have, they're evolving into being in touch with all these things that they were really told not to, right? To man up.
And even that used to confuse me when I was young because, you have society teaching boys, well, you should, sow your oats and, have sex with a lot of women, that was how you got your experience through porn and having sex with a lot of women. But then girls were told to be virgins and be pure. So I'm like, well, who the hell are they sleeping with? So I used to always be confused.
Yeah.
Like,
there's a group of women out there.
Right.
So, but also, so a lot of the messages were confusing. I remember.
That makes sense. I didn't even think about that.
And also on the flip side, also how traumatic that is we only refer to anything. I've worked in the field of sexual violence for 8 years, and listen, there's a lot, there with that toxic masculinity came some boys at 12 and 13 where they were encouraged to have sex at 12 and 13. And I've had them as survivors and victims, and they would say, that was traumatic for me. My dad took me to, he found someone and they told me to have sex and they all pushed me. And it's like a coercion, right? It's not, it's that's what you got to do, be a man, and that's traumatic. Or showing boys porn at 8 and 9 and 10, that's trauma. That's not just trauma, that's sexual abuse. That's under the category of sexual abuse. So while we were doing that, we were also traumatizing boys who grew up to not be able to address these things. And then they'd come to my agency on the DL and no one knew because, sometimes, that would not be acceptable. That's not trauma. You're a man, So that's where that toxic masculinity thing, and that's the flip side of that. So even when they got to the age where they could sow their oaths, then now they're traumatized, just like any other person,
And it's more than you realize, because my husband and I did a retreat last year, and part of it was healing sexual trauma. And they separated us. They separated us male and female, and then they separated us like who has trauma and who doesn't. And my husband said that when they asked the guys to raise their hands, it was more than he thought. He said it was like way more than half. He said it was like 3/4 of the guys raised their hands. Damn. And he was shocked that many guys in the room had sexual trauma in their life. So, again, it's one of those taboo subjects, or people don't talk about it. You don't realize what the guys carry and that they have nobody to.
They don't have anyone to talk to.
Express it. They don't know, right? They're not taught to express or get help or anything like that.
Because that's not a manly thing to do,
right? So they live with this guilt and shame around it.
Or they're abused by women. A lot of these men are abused by women, 20-something-year-olds, and they're 13, and they're not allowed to say that was rape or sexual assault because she's a hot 25-year-old. Why the hell is a 25-year-old having sex with a 13-year-old? So that's a pedophile. Point blank period.
It's like 50 Shades of Grey.
No, point blank period. That's a pedophile. And so it's like, well, that same kid grows up, goes to the police, and they're like, okay, like, you're lucky. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
those things always happen. So yes, we want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and even
And
you
then
don't
he'll
even
have a
realize.
red room. He'll have a red room like Mr. Gray.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who knows
From
how
the
that?
trauma.
Yeah, who knows how that plays out,
When are we
right?
gonna do the next part?
right.
What happened?
No, I just had an image in my head because when we were talking about like the geriatric sex or whatever.
The Cocoon movie is exactly what came to my head.
Mhm.
The diabetes guy. The
No, but
diabetes.
I even remember like my mom's sister, my aunt, my mom's sister, like me having a conversation on the phone with her, and she was saying that she, like, you know, they're older. So again, old people talking about old people sex, where they're talking about like they're farting and sex and all this stuff or whatever,
Oh.
where you're just like, okay, this is TMI. But she was just like, oh, he can't always like finish, like he can't keep up. And so she was like, she doesn't get to have her orgasm and stuff like that. And she needed help, and that they were talking about using a vibrator. So I had just had my bachelorette party and I had a bunch. So I was like, oh, well, I have extra. Do you want me to mail you one? So I mailed her one, and I mailed her. It looked like a dolphin or something. It was some kind of
Yeah.
animal thing. And she calls me on the phone, hysterical laughing, saying she opened the package with him, like intending to use it. And then they were like, what is this?
The dolphin.
And she said they were like hysterical laughing or
Dolphin and
whatever.
the
And
rabbit.
I was like, yeah, it was like a
Rabbit.
dolphin,
Why
a
are they like
rabbit, or
naming them after animals? It's really weird.
it was
Part
something
2
like
will pull
that.
them out.
I don't even remember because it's so a long time ago. But I just remember her calling hysterical laughing, like, "What did you send me?" Like it wasn't what she was expecting.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, "Hey, I'm glad you're still getting some, girl. You know, like,
Mhm.
any way I can help, I'm here for you, Titi."
Aw. Qué linda.